Right, morning guys. So it's been a while since I last did a video. It's about three or 4 months, I think. I moved to Germany since then, and the Land Rover is still in England. So yeah, it's been a bit tricky to carry on with the project. But I've been over now for a couple of weeks and managed to get on quite a lot, as you can probably see. So I had the bulkhead back, which has been fully refurbished, new footwells, new A-posts here, the parts of the frames on the side, so they're all replaced, and a few other bits and bobs which have been sorted out. That was a favour actually from the chassis company, because there was a couple of issues with the chassis which weren't quite right, but didn't really affect the way the engine and gearbox sat in the chassis. So as a favour they had the bulkhead done for me, which was a massive help because it was a big job. However, it's worth pointing out that because it's galvanized, the galvanizing process, it uses, I'm not sure how it works, but it uses a lot of heat. And although before it was galvanized, I was told that it wouldn't affect the metal sheeting or the metal in the bulkhead, because I'd heard that it sort of affects bows the metal and stuff. I said, no, it'll be fine. It really does. So I don't know if it's how you do it or who you get to do it, and whether the results can be different. But you can see there are so many bows and what do you call them, like waves in the metal, which obviously weren't there before. It's quite phenomenal. So all in the new footwells as well. I don't know if you can see that in the light. You can see that big crease there. I mean, nothing is flat. So I'm really quite shocked actually how badly it reacted to the galvanizing process. But every panel, that one there's got a big bow in it. Trying to show you with the light here, which is rather difficult. There you can just see the shadow of the bow just going through here. But yeah, every part. So what I've been doing when I've been fixing items to the bulkhead, you can hear it creak and crack where the metal's sort of being pulled. You can see it here as well. It's bad light, but you can see here these big bows in the back of the metal, which is quite a shock. So if you ever have your bulkhead galvanized, then it does affect the integrity of the metal. But otherwise, other than that, having the bulkhead back has really allowed me to crack on. I've probably done about 4 or 5 days on the car since getting the bulkhead back, and been able to do so much. So I rebuilt the pedal boxes for the clutch and the brake, the brake cylinder here. So there's a new cylinder here, new hoses all round. I've used some of these old 1/4 inch pipes here, which is quite nice. I've rebuilt the steering box. I've got this is the fluid you need for it, which is quite a well-known Penrite semi-fluid and steering box lube. So that's going to go in later on. So that's been rebuilt, that's in. I've put the accelerator mechanism back in, which seems to work fine. I've done all of the pedals, so I now have clutch, brake and accelerator. Steering column is in there. I've put the flaps back on, but I need new seals here. Heating matrix is refurbished and back in, all new hoses around here, all tightened up. I've finally got one of these fan cowls, which even since owning the car when I was 17, never had one of these original fan cowls, and I got that from Dunsfold because they are very difficult to get hold of. And there's the little bracket that goes with it. I'm not 100% sure if I've put that in the right place, but it seems to be the only hole that meets with this bracket. But I'm very pleased with that. Everything's in. What else can I say? Oh yes, I really didn't want to have to do it, but I ended up doing it because it's the only way. I drilled into the chassis which I didn't want to do, but used the original clamps for the brake cables. I'd seen somebody else on the internet who had cable tied their brake cables to the chassis, but I was told that fixing isn't sufficient because when the car vibrates, it vibrates to the extent where the copper tubing rubs through, so that's why I decided to do that. There's my junction here, or the union, which I had to drill into the chassis for this post here, which is I feel the best way to do it. I've greased everything, and then the next thing I need to do to make it drivable, if you like, is to fix the new feed brake pipe to the cylinder here. Other than that, I've got the coil on, all the electrics are connected, but obviously none of the loom is connected on the dashboard yet, and we are pretty close to being able to start it. I'd really like to do that today actually. I've got over here, I've got the coolant and distilled water. Some might say distilled water is overkill, but I just feel as though it's having flushed the engine and got everything clean, I'd like to use distilled water. So I'm going to do a 25% mix on that, which takes me down to something like -15, which will be absolutely sufficient for me. And then we'll have to mess about with the timing, and then hopefully get it started. I've got a couple of annoying oil leaks, which I was really hoping I wouldn't have on this wheel hub here, which I've replaced pretty much everything. There's a leak on there, which is dripping into that pan, and also down here, which you can see, those are actually pretty big oil leaks, which is mega annoying because they seem to be coming from the, which you can't see, the sump pan of the transfer case. But those are my only two oil leaks, but that's, I filled up the fluids maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and that's how much has come out, which yeah, is quite a lot, but it's not, at least it's not dripping constantly. But otherwise, yeah, there's another one of those original, you can't see it, but one of those original fixings there for the brake pipes. But yeah, otherwise it's I've made massive progress on it, and I'm really looking forward to getting it started. Just before filling the coolant up, I ran some normal water through the system, bearing in mind I had already drained it and flushed it when I was rebuilding the engine. And interestingly enough, you know, I mean, that's a clean aluminium pot there, and you can just see how dirty the water is that's come out of the engine. So, I mean, I dare say that's just rust residue, but it's worth doing, worth cleaning it out before you put the coolant in. I put about 2.5 litres through it. I didn't really fill it up, but 2.5 litres got that amount of. So I'm just fitting the dashboard so that I can then fit the electrics. My aim is to get it started hopefully this weekend. I mean, it's Sunday afternoon, but yeah, maybe tomorrow. But it's a very busy week this coming week. My father died a couple of weeks ago, quite unexpectedly, so that's really why I'm over in England from Germany. And yeah, the funeral's on Thursday the 2nd of August, which is 2018, and a lot of preparation work to be doing over here, funeral, wake, etc., and all the paperwork and helping out my mum. But in between times, I'm just trying to do a bit of work on the Land Rover, take my mind off things possibly. And you're making pretty good progress actually. So bulkhead is well and truly in. I have just put the top part of the dashboard in. Luckily, having bagged up all of the screws and marked and named them at the time of taking it all apart, so that is really important. When I was taking it apart, and I can imagine quite a few people do this on a restoration project, they think, oh, you know, I'm really going to go for it and I'm going to get everything brand new. But then actually in reality, most of the stuff that you take off can be reused, which I've really found, and you can see that by all of these. There's a box of marked up bags here, and yeah, this is the looks a bit of a mess at the moment, but I've just replaced the binnacle on this. The original one I had was broken, which is over there in that box, broken on the side, which I'm going to keep. But then it's just putting all the electrics back, which I have partially marked up, but made a video of when I took it all apart a couple of years ago, which I have on this phone. So, as I say, these are the screws that I've got left over now from the bag saying dash screws, and we're slowly but surely getting there. So I've just put in, I had to buy some smaller rivets for these items here, for the gauzes that go in here. I'll just tell you which ones they are because I've got it shown on this rivet gun. This rivet gun was pretty cool, can recommend that. Can't remember how much it was, 20, 30 quid, but it's pretty good. Let me just see, 3.2 1/8, so 1/8 I suppose. This comes with a whole bunch of options here, and yeah, these are the smaller type of rivets that I've been using to put the body panel, not the body panels, but the gauzes back on the vents and things like the markings. This panel here, which I'm not 100% sure whether I've got up the right way or not. I think it might be upside down, but there we are. And things like that. So also these sorts of things, this rubber panel here, which again I took off thinking I'll chuck away and get a new one, but I haven't, and I'm reusing it and it's all fine. I've done small things like I've done a little repair job to the cylinder there. I can't quite remember what that's called, the ignition cylinder possibly, the connectors at the back. Just doing small things. I've just realised I've got these round the wrong way. The kink, or the dog leg, actually goes the other side, so it goes like that. So I've got to change those over. I stripped out the wiper motor, not the motor, but the gearing, which is now behind this dashboard, and took out all the old grease, which, you know, after 40 years still looked pretty good. Could have probably left it, but I gave all the spindles a nice clean up. They had rust in them here, so they weren't turning that well. So those turn really freely now, and I greased them all up. Just going back to this bulkhead, galvanizing it, I probably would never do that again, and I wouldn't recommend it. The amount of bend that is in this bulkhead is phenomenal, and this is supposed to have been done by the best people in the country. Also, just by making small adjustments to it, by knocking this with a piece of wood, because it was bowed up, this lip that this dashboard sits onto, is a really bad idea, because what happens is, and I've only just noticed this, is that the galvanized cracks, which you can see there, which if I don't treat it will let in water. Look at that crack there. So you have to be ultra careful with it, but ultimately I just wouldn't do it again. I wouldn't recommend galvanizing a bulkhead. Dunsfold Land Rovers, who I spoke to after I'd sent this away, said, no, we don't do that, we repair them and put them back on the car because of this very reason. But there we are, you live and learn, and that's what I've learned. But otherwise, what else can I tell you? Yes, we bled the brakes yesterday, and I say we because I had some help with that, because it's impossible to do it on your own if you haven't got the right equipment. I had a bit of fun putting this brake cylinder in. I actually chose the one from the long wheelbase because it had more volume, but possibly something I also wouldn't do again, because there are two fittings on this. Is the feed here, it's a 1/4 inch, and the feed to my braking system and all the brake pipes is copper 3/16. But actually, if you look closely at this, I only found this out yesterday, this connector is also a 1/4 inch, just like this. And on the original, this is 1/4 inch feed, and this is 3/16. So I don't know if I've done the right thing, but I've managed to flare the 3/16 out to a 1/4 inch to fit in there. There are no leaks. I have a fully working braking system. I had a couple of issues here with these quite expensive braided brake pipes here, which are 2 inches longer because of the parabolic springs. You can't use standards on this because of the travel on the parabolic springs. But I had it down here, quite a bad leak, because these original nuts here, which tighten against this little bracket which fits onto the hub, the thread on this section doesn't protrude long enough, or not quite as long as the original. So I got a bit of a leak there, but I managed to tighten everything up. No more leaks, so I'm good to go there. So we've now got as I say, we bled it twice, and even on the second time, quite a lot of air came out until it was completely free. So those brakes it takes a bit of pumping. but those brakes are good. The clutch is all right. It sort of bites quite low, and I'd like to bleed that again. But otherwise, the accelerator mechanism is all connected up. I've checked top dead center on the crank and piston number 1, which is this first one. And I've got a timing tool on the bench over there, which when I get it started, hopefully soon, I will be able to do the timing. What else can I say? I've got quite a nice, just a small thing here, I've got quite a nice braided, well, you know, this fabric type here. I had to buy that from a specialist because the original one I got from Paddocks, I think, was white and it looked awful. And it comes with these quite nice little, oh, I can't get them out, but they're not fitted in yet, but they're little split pins, brass split pins. Quite expensive, but it was worth it because it's a good colour and it matches the rest of the body. Everything's been coming together pretty quickly over the last few days, purely out of necessity because I really want to try and get it done as much as possible. The next step for me is to take the car back to Germany because I'm now living there, which is going to be quite a big thing. Ideally, what I'd do is I'd finish it in the UK and drive it home, which is in Dresden in Germany. But I don't think I'm going to get enough time here to do that. So the most likely scenario is for me to hire a trailer, hire a big Sprinter, you know, van, which we have at work, and we're able to rent those out just for the cost of fuel, which is really practical. Come pick everything up, including my tools and the hardtop, which is over there, and the new original sides to my hardtop because I don't like those Defender style sides, and take it all back to Germany. But I've got to find a space over there to do that. So that's the next step. But I really, really, really want to get it started. This visit to England, and as I say, on top of everything, it's a very busy coming week, so that's why I'm working in the evenings. But we'll see how we get on.